Welcome to the Alley Oop Podcast, folks. I'm your host, Paul Morrissey. Good to hear from you. I guess it's good to hear my own voice on here. It's been a while. I'm not even going to look at when the last episode was, but the summer's beginning. I'm going to do some episodes on the road because I'll be in Canada for like a month. If you go to paulhasawebsite.com, you'll see I'm going to be at the Absolute Comedy Clubs in Kingston, June 10th to the 14th. Absolute Comedy Club in Toronto, June 24th to the 28th. And Ottawa, July 1st to the 5th. The Comedy Nest in Montreal, July 9th to the 12th. And then I'll be in North Carolina, Virginia, and then doing the Lucille Ball Comedy Festival with Jerry Seinfeld in Jamestown, New York at the end of July. I think it's July 31st through August 1st. So go to paulhasawebsite.com for all that stuff. And I've been doing a lot of podcast episodes with my good buddy and hilarious comedian Tom Papa. His podcast is called Come to Papa. He does these great live shows, which I did the Halloween episode with Matt Damon and a bunch of other super talented and famous people, way more famous than me. They've had Zach Galifianakis, Russell Peters, tons of guys and gals, Allison Hannigan from How I Met Your Mother. So if you haven't seen that and you're in the Los Angeles area, it's always at Largo at the Coronet Theater, the live shows. But Tom and I have been doing these morning kind of comedy prep podcast. That doesn't sound funny as it is. It's just two comedians in the morning talking about what's funny. So if you want to check that out, go to cometopapalive.com and subscribe on iTunes. We did, I think, 2 episodes this week. We were just chatting at Tom's new house in his new neighborhood. So can't tell what else is going on. Probably David Letterman retired since I've talked to you last. So I did a nice, well, not that I was nice, but I did a cool radio show on NPR. The show's called The Frame, and they did a nice interview just about me getting bumped and coming back and doing the show. And also Los Lobos, who was a musical guest, and some other historical facts you might not have known about David Letterman. So, and I'll probably do just a separate episode of that because I still have a lot of cool. I mean, just all the heartfelt goodbyes and last appearances kind of made me dig up a lot of the video and stuff that I had taken while I was preparing for Letterman when I got bumped. And then when I went back to do the show, I actually have some video inside the theater, which I don't know if I can. I don't think I can get in trouble for that anymore. Let's test out the legal teams of. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll see if I can find a venue for that or a place where you guys can see that. So, and what else? I'm writing some funny stuff for the Farce Report, some funny headlines and stories. So if you see me post something that's funny and you see my name under it, you can hit like or share it or something that will make them think that people like what I write. And what else? We have a TV show coming out on Fox June 25th called Boom, which Tom Papa hosted and I helped writing and production and all that kind of stuff with, which we did all the episodes. It's hilarious. People get bombs exploded in their face of goo and muck, and it's basically like Double Dare, but people also win like $500,000. So check it out on Fox. It's called Boom. And what else? Oh, this episode. You're going to love this. This is my good buddy, Nate O'Neill, who I haven't seen in a long time. And I was performing in San Francisco, and I just saw him post something on Facebook, and I was like, oh, Nate lives in San Francisco. And it's a weird thing with guys that Nate was one of my basketball buddies that we used to play all the time in the summers and against each other, actually. He was part of a great team at Binghamton High School, went on to play at Colgate, And even more interesting, Nate played for the Washington Generals, which, if you don't know much about the basketball Harlem Globetrotters story, the Washington Generals are the team that gets beat by the Globetrotters every single game. And so there was a point in my basketball career where I was going to do that. I ended up getting hired as a TV sports guy for ABC and took that path instead. But Nate ended up playing for the Generals for, I think, at least 2 or 3 years. And also my coach at Cortland State, Tom Spanbauer, did that for a couple years. And so he heard a couple Tom Spanbauer stories. So we talked about that and what it's like to be touring all over the world. I mean, he played against the Globetrotters when they had Daryl Dawkins and some great, great legendary guys. And the interesting thing is, the Globetrotters, they play in Madison Square Garden. He played in the old Boston Garden. So we've got a lot of cool pictures and stories just about Nate. And then we kind of talk because, like I said, we haven't seen each other since maybe the end of or middle of college. So yeah, it was good to see him, and he came out to the shows at Cobb's with his lovely wife, and has got 2 great daughters, and he's up in the Bay Area, so I may hopefully see him again soon. But this is the podcast that we talk about playing for the Washington Generals, and also rehash a little bit of my basketball career, because there's some people that still don't believe I ever played basketball. I mean, there's a lot of people who still don't believe that I'm actually a comedian, but David Letterman kind of proved them wrong on that one. But Nate is, I think he scored 11 points against a Syracuse team that went to the Sweet 16, I believe, and also is still the all-time three-point field goal percentage leader for Colgate. And I think he's like top 5 or 6 still in the Patriot League. And one of his buddies is Donald Foyle, who went on to play for the Golden State Warriors, which I think they both still live relatively close to each other and keep in touch. So if you like basketball, you'll love this episode. Even if you don't, I think the Washington Generals story is pretty interesting, and it's cool to get a little behind-the-scenes look at what that was like for Nate to be touring endlessly and just playing basketball. So thank you guys for listening again. If you want to listen to the old episodes, we're not talking about daily news, so I think these are all interesting interviews if you want to go back and listen to the Jim Gaffigan, Larry Miller, Kid from Kid and Play. There's all kinds of different interesting people. So hope you guys enjoy them, and hope to see you at a show. And here's my good buddy, basketballer Nate O'Neill. Nate, the real deal O'Neill, is how I'd like to introduce him. All right, test. Yeah, if you can just kind of hold it a little. Yeah, just test. You can
test.
Yeah. You can be a little relaxed. I don't want you to feel like you're on. Have you been?
And is this? Do you edit this?
Testify? Yeah.
Okay.
So don't sweat it. We'll protect the names.
Yeah.
All right. So we're testing this early, but this is the Alley Oop Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Morrissey, and we have an old friend, Nate O'Neill, is with us. And thanks for being on the show, Nate.
Absolutely, Paul. It's a pleasure to see you after all these years, and congratulations on your burgeoning career, and excited to talk with you tonight.
Well, here's the thing. I have very separate worlds. I have friends of mine from my basketball days, and I have friends in comedy, obviously, and they do not agree, and they don't meet. So there's people that don't ever believe that I ever played basketball ever. And then there's probably people like you that never believe that I could be a comedian. So it's probably a strange thing for you to find out that I'm a comic.
So to be frank with you, I think my mother, who you had interacted with before in the past, at Broome Community College, mentioned that you were a comedian, and I'm like, Paul Morrissey, the same one that I know. So to be frank with you, knowing you from the basketball floor and competing against you, when I heard that you were making a living as a comic, it was a little bit shocking. But I've since obviously seen some of your videos and your material, and have laughed quite a bit. So it seems like a fit right now.
Thanks, man. Well, you're giving me credibility because, like I said, I've been in the comedy world so long that there's people that never believed I played basketball. So just you as a Division I athlete and a professional player to say that you know me as a basketball player is giving me credibility right now. But we haven't talked for a while just about our past. We're both in sunny California right now, but we both grew up in upstate New York, which the Binghamton area. You're actually from the city of Binghamton. I'm from a little tiny town outside of Binghamton. So, and I always explain Binghamton's like Detroit without the city. But Nate was a star quarterback as well, right? You play football, and then you also, but one of the best pure shooters, I'll say, Jim Ryder from Tioga and Nate O'Neill, probably the two purest shooters I've ever seen. And so, Nate, you played at Binghamton High School. And what do you remember about us playing during the summers and at the YMCA during those days?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, playing at Binghamton High School, we had some good rivals in the area, and you guys had a great team in your later years at Owego High. I remember you had the big fella, I think Corey Zink.
Yeah, Corey Zink, yep.
And a couple other really good players. So we got pumped up when we went to play with you guys. And then, just working out with in the summer with some of my teammates and your teammates. It was always good to interact with guys from other schools, the best players at other schools as well. And certainly, you could knock down the jumper as well.
Well, I mean, you guys, Binghamton for that whole era. I mean, you were growing up, and people might remember like King Rice and Tony Marshall, Middlebrooks. Like you guys were like a dynasty, probably just before as you're growing up. So, how many Division I guys were there on that team?
Yeah, so that was kind of the golden era of the Binghamton High hoops era. In fact, there was an article in the local paper not long ago. It's like 30 years since those teams actually won the whole state championship.
Oh yeah,
and
it's like 85 or something.
Yeah. And so it's kind of put into context now that no other teams have gone that far from our area.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, they had, the biggest name was King Rice, who ended up playing point guard at North Carolina and now is the head coach at Monmouth University.
Is he at Monmouth?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
He's the head coach there. And then Rick Coleman was another great athlete who ended up playing at UB, University of Buffalo, as did Rob Middlebrooks.
Mm-hmm.
And some great teams. My cousin was actually on that team as well.
What was your cousin's name?
Kevin O'Neill.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So he ended up playing at Hobart College.
Okay.
And is now a doctor in the Dallas area.
Oh, all right.
But, really, really strong teams, and that kind of built the culture for us, right? Because, they had always won, and us growing up watching those guys, you were expected to win, and it really was a winning culture. So we just kind of piggybacked on that, and, obviously didn't have quite the success as they did in terms of going to the state championship, but, winning the local championships and competing in intersectional play was a great thrill. Yeah,
you basically had, definitely 5 college basketball players. You had yourself, who played at Colgate. Your teammate, Jason Watley, played at Colgate. Rob Baxter played at Fordham. Jeff Merrow was a star at Binghamton. And who else am I missing?
Yeah, so, those 4. And Jason Watley was actually the all-time leading shot blocker at Colgate for some time before Donald Foyle came in. And senior season, Rob Baxter led the Patriot League in assists.
Right.
And then, Jeff Merrill, as you mentioned, probably one of the most underrated players you'll ever play against, just because he very unassuming when you see him and even on the floor, but just so efficient. I think he was the all-time leading field goal percentage leader at Binghamton for some time. And then we had some other great athletes, Chabasco Spivey, who ended up playing college football, Mike LaFleur, who ended up playing college football.
LaFleur, yeah.
So yeah, it was a great group of guys, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that, growing up in Owego, basically all I did was play basketball. And then when I got to the point where I could actually drive a car, the first thing I did was go and play in the summer leagues with you guys. And we were probably two of, I don't know, the podcast audience doesn't know, we're both white guys. So there was
extremely white.
I remember that summer league at what was that park? Why am I forgetting it now?
Columbus
Park, which isn't a place that my mother would probably want me to go. But that was a pretty rough place, but we knew that was the best game in town. So when did you start playing there?
Yeah. So, that was always the spot where, you kind of earned your respect as a local basketball player.
Right.
There certainly is the YMCA, and there certainly is even the high school games. And, even back then, the CYO circuit had some really talented players.
Right.
But to really earn your local respect, you had to go down to Columbus and show them your skills. So I probably didn't go down there till I was, later, junior, senior in high school.
Yeah.
And then a little bit after when I started playing college ball. But, that was the spot.
Right. And I would say it's probably me, you, Rob Baxter, probably the only three white guys. I can't think of anybody.
Yeah.
I did bring Jim Ryder down there once, and he was very concerned about his car. And I remember they did lay a lot of money down on the two white guys.
Yeah.
So that was and then I ended up, I transferred. I played at Hartwick my freshman year, and when my dad got the job at Broome, I transferred. I ended up playing with Tex Bino, who, I don't know if he was he running back then or not?
He was a very good athlete and very good player. And I remember him performing well down at the
incredible playground player. I mean, there's certain guys that's their thing.
Yes.
And Tex's game was he was kind of half Allen Iverson, half Rafer Alston, I would say. And then Bruce Kennedy, who is another one, huge leaper.
Yes.
So I got to play with both of those guys at Broome when we went to the national championship playing for my dad. So that was a pretty cool ride. We only had 7 guys on the team, so that was that was an interesting year, kind of fun. But you were one of the best shooters down there. And I remember, did you ever play with King Rice on anything, or did you?
So no, King I think is probably 5 or 6 years older than me, so never formally played, other than maybe a pickup game here or there.
Right. Yeah, I remember the first time that I played in Columbus, and he ended up guarding me. And this is like after North Carolina, I think even. And I did, because somebody was talking to him, and I did score the first time I got it, and then the next time down, I'm bringing the ball up, and you can just feel like just his hand on your hip, and you just can't even move. Like I couldn't, and you just realize like, oh, that's college defense right there.
Yeah, exactly. He decided that he wanted to really assert himself, and it's amazing, when you play at the collegiate level and then interact with some of these guys that play even at the next level, and just the exponential degree of talent that they have. Yeah,
and just how much better you got from even being a great high school player to be able to even be on the bench in a place like Colgate is like, I mean, you had to work extremely hard. And you guys had a good team. Was that the Tucker Neal years or the?
Yeah. So it's interesting. We my freshman year we were actually 5-23.
Right.
So we struggled, and by my senior year, we tied for first in the league during the regular season.
Right.
And then ended up playing in the Patriot League championship game on ESPN.
Oh, wow.
For a chance to win and go to the NCAA tournament. So unfortunately, we lost by 2, and it's ironic because Colgate just celebrated the 20th year anniversary of their first NCAA tournament game, which after I graduated, Donald Foyle came in and they went to 2 straight tournaments. So we actually had a little ceremony just back in February where I went back. We had a little alumni game and then a little banquet to commemorate that team. And I actually spoke at the banquet, and the message that I gave was a lot of it was to the current team because they had been performing well and were actually second in the league and had a chance to maybe make the tournament. And I told them, it's 20 years later, and every March I actually still get a little bit bitter.
Right.
I get a little bit disappointed that I was basically one possession away from making the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. And, so I told the guys, cherish the opportunity because you don't realize what you have right in front of you right now.
Right.
So that was cool. It was good to be able to do that. And I had a great time at Colgate.
And you guys kind of paved the way for that whole, Adano, that brought like national, I don't know if he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but there was always stuff about him in there. And I remember seeing him in high school a little bit because he was from like a tiny school, right? I forget, yeah,
well, he's actually from the Caribbean, mm-hmm. and there was 2 professors at Colgate that became his legal guardian. They were down there doing some work and met him, and he actually came back and lived in Hamilton.
Right.
And was at Hamilton High.
Okay. And then, and so did you end up interacting with him much, like coming back, or were you already?
So he was. I was a senior when he was in high school. So he would do some workouts with us. So I met him then a little bit. And then he actually lives out here now. He lives about 15 miles from here.
Oh, does he really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He runs a couple nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
And I go to his events occasionally. He was back at the event at Colgate in February, so interacted with him there a little bit as well. But yeah, he certainly, carved out himself a nice career in the NBA and a nice lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing him after he was playing like in they have like the AAU games and stuff. He was playing at the YMCA in Binghamton, actually. And he was just so, I remember I saw him miss like 4 or 5 layups. I was like, man, I don't know what the guy's problem is. And then I see he scores 40. So it's so it's like, oh, he should have had 50. That's what you're complaining about. Right. So it's like you could tell he was just on another level, especially for those high school kids around there. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. So, and the funny thing you mentioned, Mike LaFleur, that's the only remnants of we played actually Rob, myself, Corey Zink, a few other guys, Chuck, Gillette. We all went down and played. This is even before AAU was like a real thing. We just got this team together. Yep. And you were already gone, but this is like the summer before our freshman year. And we played, and you know how Rob is, Rob's pretty chatty and competitive, and this guy's really D'ing him up. And he picked him once, and then we see him going down, he's slowing down, like it's a big deal, and Rob's like, what's this guy going to do? And he does like a double pump reverse, and that ended up being Bob Sura. Okay. So the one video, actually a guy that we knew, his dad took a video of that game, and I had 35 that game. That was my best game. But Sura had 37, and he beat us. All right. So that's my one claim to fame, is that's actually on video, that somebody verified that. But
you dropped 35 on Sura.
Yeah, but he had 37. And the funny thing is, he wasn't a great shooter. He was like a set shot shooter at that point, and he must have worked extremely hard. Like that freshman year, he had a great freshman year, I remember. Yeah. So yeah, with him and Cassell and Charlie Ward, I think those were those years. But yeah, so you finish at Colgate. You're starting 2 guard for that championship year, right? Didn't you win your league that year, right? Or
my senior year at Colgate?
Yeah.
So I started my junior and senior year both. So and ended up the all-time leading 3-point field goal percentage guy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which actually still stands today.
Nice. I think I have ninth in Division III for like a season. I think that's what, but we were trying to verify. I think I blew it. Like my last game, I think I shot like 2 for 10 or something and blew my percentage out of the water. But so that still stands. You got that etched anywhere? Or is that They don't give you a plaque for that?
I don't get a plaque for that, no, but it's still out there somewhere.
But did they introduce you as that at the banquet, or do you have to remind them?
No, they didn't. I don't know if too many people really know. I mean, it's
well, we mentioned it on this podcast.
There you go.
We'll introduce you. So then this next chapter of your basketball life, this is where my friends are most interested. So what happens after Colgate?
Yeah, so here
I also remember you had an interesting major at Colgate.
So my major at Colgate was geography, which I was really kind of attracted to that, mostly because of the professors that I met. Some really good people, and the classes at Colgate were really small, so you got a chance to really interact with the professors, and met some really good ones. So that's kind of what led me down to that path. And then, after I graduated, here I am, a 22-year-old kid that has a college degree, as you know, just loved sports growing up.
Yeah.
Was always playing sports.
And still at the YMCA every day.
Yeah.
Seeing you around.
Yeah. And so, what am I going to do now? And actually thought about trying to play overseas a little bit, and did a few camps, and was just trying to see what I could get done in basketball. And a guy that I played hoops with at Colgate had got hooked up with the Washington Generals, the team that plays against the Globetrotters. So
right.
I reached out to him and told him, hey, I'm interested in exploring this, and he got me an interview with the legendary Red Klotz, who is the founder of the Washington Generals. Had been playing since the 50s. And ironically, Red actually passed away earlier this year.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I got a chance to meet Red, sent him a highlight tape of me playing in college, and had a little interview with him. And the next thing I know, I'm in Buenos Aires getting ready for a Globetrotter show.
So just like that.
Yeah.
You didn't have any, did you tell your coach or anything? Or did you like, how did that come about, or were you pretty motivated to try to get something done?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I hadn't really traveled much, right? Other than the traveling that I did as a college basketball player, and a chance to go overseas a little bit, see the world, stay around basketball to some capacity. Obviously, it wasn't the highest level of competitive basketball, but an opportunity again just to, as I tell people who ask me about it, I got to do three things I was good at: travel the world, shoot jump shots, and play no defense.
So do they actually? Okay, well, are you sworn to secrecy on this stuff, or how much?
I am sworn to secrecy on when I'm being recorded.
Okay. So. Well, here's the thing. So and I don't know if you know, my coach, I ended up playing at Binghamton. Right. And there's a very famous coach, Dick Baldwin, who after starting 26 games informed me that I was too short to play college basketball. So he may or may not have losing his mind at that point. So I transferred to Cortland State for their fresh new coach, Tom Spanbauer. So do you know?
So it's
Tom Spanbauer.
Funny. It's actually very funny that you bring up the name Tom Spanbauer. When I first joined the Generals, the player coach at the time was a guy by the name of Tim Burkhart, who is a legendary general for a lot of reasons. But he apparently was great friends with this guy Tom Spanbauer, and he would refer often. And I never actually met Tom Spanbauer, but he would often refer to Spanny when he talked about basketball. So it's funny that you bring up that name, because I feel like I know him even though I've never met him.
Okay. Now, and here's the thing. So Tom Spanbauer, I think he got the Cortland State job where he played at. My dad also played at Cortland State. Yeah. So I transferred there just for my senior year. I already have my degree at Binghamton. I just have a year of basketball left, and Dick Baldwin tells me I'm too short. So then this guy, and it's funny, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you didn't play in this obviously, but there's a thing called the 6 foot and under tournament in Newego, and it was people 6 foot and under play on 8.5 foot rims. And so I'm going and there's this guy that's kind of bald, and a little ornery and a lot older than me. Ends up being Tom Spanbauer. So I was talking crap to this guy the whole time, and then I find out like he's the new coach at Cortland. And there's a guy, Joe Palladino, who was like roommates with him or something weird like that. They were like good friends. He's like, oh yeah, you should. And I didn't know it was the same guy. So then I end up going there, and he's like, hey, you remember me? So it was like kind of a rocky beginning, but it ended up being great. Like I ended up having like a great season, and we kind of, they were down a little bit, and he's had like a great career there. I think he's been there 20 years now or something crazy like that. But so yeah, he played for the Generals, which he's one of the most competitive guys I know. Yeah. So that was one of the things was like, I can't imagine him doing that.
Yeah.
And then I do remember this great story from Jeremy Greenberg, who also played at Binghamton. His dad played for the Generals.
Yes.
Did you ever speak to him about this?
I did, yes. I spoke to Coach Greenberg, who obviously was the coach at Vestal High when I was playing at Binghamton High, so we competed against him. Great coach, and we had a chance to
ridiculous jump shot too. Like could shoot from 35 feet away.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the hip.
Yep. Distant shooter.
So what did he say to you, or did you?
So yeah, I mean, he was just like, it's a unique opportunity. Go out there and make the best of it. It didn't sound like he had too long of a stint with them, but. Just again, go out and have some fun with it, and that's what I did. And
I do remember one story he might have told at basketball camp about like there might have been a couple years like must have been the 60s that there wasn't a lot of fanfare, and the whole thing that y'all always want to hear is like, well, tonight if you can take them, take them. And he said that's what they told us, take your shot. Yeah. And then they completely choked.
Yeah.
But how about Jeremy? Me being in comedy is weird. What about Jeremy Greenberg being a mafia son in CSI or whatever he is? He's like a serious actor now.
Yeah. Interesting to see that. Obviously another guy that we competed against in high school, great player. I remember our senior year, I think we only had one loss in league, and it was against Vestal, and I think he put something around 42 up. Again, great player. But yeah, I think the last time I saw him, he was on TV kissing Lucy Liu. So yeah, good for him.
He's in Army Wives, and like I saw him in a couple comedies. He's married to Mary Stuart Masterson. He's more Hollywood than me. So. But anyway, so you meet with Red, and then you kind of sign on for this. So
yeah.
So what do you encounter, or what can you think of any unique highlights or stories?
So yeah, it's interesting. My first tour of duty was in South America, so I show up in Buenos Aires and have no idea really what to expect. It's 2 days before our first show, and I'm frankly, a little bit nervous, right? Mm-hmm. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And everybody's just like, oh, relax, you'll pick up the show real quick. So we had a couple days of training camp. You kind of learn the routine, and we did it. So I remember actually feeling really pretty excited before that first show.
Yeah.
The crowd's kind of going wild. And
now, how big is this crowd?
So this wasn't necessarily one of our biggest ones in my first game. It was probably, couple thousand, 2,000 to 5,000 maybe. But they were pretty excited. The fans in South America, I recall being pretty into it. And the types of venues that we played in ranged from your very small 1,000-seat gym that's very local, and all the way up to we played some of the biggest NBA arenas, Madison Square Garden and a lot of the NBA arenas, Boston Garden, the old Boston Garden.
So what's that like when you're in Boston Garden in a Washington Generals uniform? Yeah. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so it's crazy because, right, I mean, obviously, again, growing up as a big sports fan, Larry Bird being one of my idols, the Boston Celtics, actually the team that I rooted for growing up. It was really special just to be able to be on the parquet floor. And it was actually we actually played in one of the last games because I remember we played there in late April or April of that year, and they tore the Garden down not long after. That was the last year.
Okay.
So a little bit of a good memory there, and just shooting jump shots on the parquet floor, a memory that I'll always have.
Yeah. So what are these guys that you're playing with? Do you recognize any of these guys from? Because they're all college players, obviously.
Yeah. My teammates, played at similar levels of college ball that I did, and then the Globetrotters, they were maybe higher, a little bit higher level players in terms of where they played. But yeah, some names that were pretty big names. In fact, the first tour I was on, Daryl Dawkins. Remember him,
Chocolate Thunder.
Chocolate Thunder was on the tour with us.
Oh, that's great.
I remember strongest individual one will ever encounter. He caught the ball down in the post one time, and I was on the wing guarding a guard. And here I am thinking, all right, let me go down and double team Daryl Dawkins. So, he's got the ball in the post, and I reach in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a ball. And not only do I have my hand on the ball, but I got like my whole forearm kind of cupping the ball as he's about to make a post move. And I'm like, oh man, I might strip Daryl Dawkins. So he proceeds to go into his move. He lifts the ball up. I got my whole forearm on the ball. So as he makes his move, he brings the ball up along with me. I go flying through the lane, and he scores. So
did he say anything to you?
I don't even think he noticed me. So we talked about playing against a different level of athlete. He was clearly a different level of athlete.
Yeah. And so are any of those guys, how much interaction do you have with those guys?
So there's a couple guys that I still keep in contact with. With social media, it's quite easy now. And some of the generals more closely. There's a good friend of mine who has stayed in college basketball. Actually, he just got the associate head coach job at University of Nevada, Reno, locally here. So, him and then a couple other guys I keep in contact with. So
I remember you telling me one story about I think you were going to South America or something, and you get there and like one of the baskets is broken.
Yeah. So a couple of interesting stories about South America. So one of the spots we went to, like you mentioned, the basket's just broken. So, the show's delayed a couple hours as they figure that out. One place they had tried to, wax the floor before the show, and it was really hot, really humid. And for whatever reason, I don't know if they used the wrong material or whatever, the floor had like this film of slippery stuff on it. And, as you know, in show business, Paul, the show must go on.
Yeah.
So here we are slipping and sliding around on this, gym floor. It's probably 110 degrees. And I don't know if we were in Colombia or Peru or wherever, but, that was another interesting game. And, I also remember another interesting story, when we were in Buenos Aires. They told us, don't drink the water, drink bottled water, stay away from dairy. So, don't eat ice cream or whatever. And, if you get a drink and it has ice in it, just drink it fast, right? So the ice doesn't melt into water and you're consuming the water. So we're actually walking down the street, during some time off, and here's Tex Harrison, who's a legendary Globetrotter. He played for 30 years. He probably has flown more miles than anybody on the planet because he played forever. And then he was a coach forever. He actually just recently passed away as well. I think he was in his 80s. And so we see him, and he's licking an ice cream cone. And we say, Tex, that we said, they told us, avoid dairy when we're down here, right? Because we're just not sure about it. He's like, well, that's all right. I'll just eat it fast. And that was a kind of epitomized a guy that had been around the world so many times and heard all the stories and was going to do what he wanted to do. So.
But wait, what was that story about the basket though? Was that in the middle of the game or something?
So no, that was we just showed up and the basket was half there. So,
so there's a crowd, but then you're just like, what do we do?
Yeah. So, and they just had to, fend the crowd off, and they had to wait while I don't know where they got it, but they ended up bringing in another basket.
Oh, okay.
And another interesting story too is we played this was Columbia. We played in this half open air arena where, there's the lower bowl, and then there's this big space around that's kind of open air, and then there's a second level, but in the middle there's the outside. And we're actually, I don't know if it was disgruntled fans who couldn't get in or just young kids that were trying to be disruptive, but we're playing, and all of a sudden there's rocks being thrown on the floor.
So any close calls with it? Because I'm sure your number one rule is to never injure a Globetrotter.
Well, it's interesting that you bring it up. So one of the South America tours that we did, it's the last show. We're in Rio, and this was a huge crowd. There's probably 26,000 people. They were going crazy. It was one of the rowdiest crowds. And when you're doing the same show with the same guys night after night, you're traveling, it can get a little bit tiring, right? And you get a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
Right? And while certainly the relationship with a lot of the Globetrotters and the Generals was good, for whatever reason, it got a little chippy on the floor, which, from an outside observer, you think, wait, this is a Globetrotter show. But when you think about it, being in show business, you're on the road.
It's right, like pro traveling. Wrestlers, they probably same thing.
Yeah. And it's your job, right? So you're doing your job, and you're traveling, and you're tired, and you're on the road, and so the game got a little bit chippy, and one thing led to another, and there was a kind of a loose ball, and it was myself, actually, another Globetrotter were both going after it, and we collided, and as we collided, we also kind of threw little forearms at each other, and the benches actually cleared, and I think the fans obviously thought it was fake.
Yeah.
But reality was it was us getting our frustrations out on each other, and so the fact that there was actually almost a real melee in a Globetrotter game where the benches did clear, I guess it's kind of interesting. But that was the end of that tour, and by the time we were on our next little tour, we forgot about it and moved on.
Yeah. So how far away do you get from Daryl Dawkins during that?
Well, yeah, he was not on that particular tour, fortunately.
Okay,
because
good.
I don't think anybody would have messed with anybody.
All right.
Case.
Well, here's a few questions everyone wants to know. Does anyone ever root for the Generals?
Absolutely, yeah.
In the crowd.
Absolutely. There's always those people that root for the underdog.
Yeah.
And is there a bigger underdog than the Washington Generals? Probably not. So absolutely. And you want to give those guys a good show. There's also those shall I say, bratty kids or kids that go out of their way to heckle us as well.
Yeah.
And without being specific, there was always a couple generals who had some choice words for those young kids who thought they were being sly and could say anything to us.
What was your go-to? Do you have anything that you can?
So I actually usually didn't say much back, but there were some guys that that would make comments about physical appearance and about family situations that were quite funny, and some of the looks on the kids' faces when they actually heard a comment come back was fun to watch.
And so, what's the best place that you ever played, or what's the moment that you remember from those years of playing?
So I think probably the whole experience. Like, I got a chance to go on a safari. We played in South Africa, and got a chance to go on a safari. We had a social event at the family of Nelson Mandela. He wasn't there, but some of his family was his granddaughter and some other family were there. And, we got a chance to see the whole dichotomy there of, we actually played in Soweto, did a show there, a free show in Soweto, which is one of the townships that struggles economically. And then also see the the better parts of the country. So that particular tour was really eye-opening and fascinating. In terms of actual games, we actually played in Tropicana Field in Tampa St. Pete, which was a unique experience to play in that huge dome. But also, Boston Garden and all the NBA arenas was good. Madison Square Garden.
Did you ever play on that aircraft carrier thing?
No. I know that they have done that, and that gets on TV. But when I was touring, never got a chance to do that.
Yeah, one of my counselors from Golden Valley was like on the Generals during that stretch. Okay, and I was like, oh, I know that guy. Yeah. But they're playing on like this huge aircraft carrier. I'm like, nobody can shoot on that thing.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that was because who was the one guy that played Sean McGovern? Do you remember that name?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I've interacted with Sean recently. He's actually good friends with Bobby Hurley.
Oh wow!
And when Bobby got UB into the tournament, we were texting back and forth a little bit.
He played at Elmira, is what I remember him from.
Yep, Sean played at Elmira. We actually played together on the Empire State Open team for a year,
right?
First, and that's how I first got to know him. And then
I drove you up to the tryouts, if you remember. Me and Dan Davies.
Okay, that's right.
My brother was going to medical school up there.
That's right.
In Syracuse, right? That's where we were.
Yep.
But yeah, McGovern was one of the guys that, because when I played for Spanbauer, that was one of the things, was like, if he wanted to make a call for me to play for the Generals, and I was still like, right now I'm so angry at myself for not even being open to how great an experience that would have been, especially for comedically, just to get me, even to do one tour would have been so great. But that was one of the guys. He's like, oh, the starting point guard from Elmira is doing it, so you should check it out. And then I was like, because that was one of the things, my dad brought our whole high school team to Ireland because one of his players played in Ireland. Okay. So that really opened us up. We played like the national team and all this kind of stuff. And where it was after you graduated, like before our senior year. And that was one of the reasons we got really good, because you're not allowed to practice, but we still got to do this tour and play 15 games or something like that. But that kind of opened my eyes, like, oh, I really love to play in another country or travel and that kind of stuff. I mean, that was a funny thing with you. Like, you did all this traveling, and then you still moved. Where did you move after you were done? Or
so yeah.
You can't even remember.
So I got done playing with the Generals. I realized I kind of had to get back in the real world at some point.
How many years did you do this, or what was the?
Yeah, so I did it for 2 years. So I graduated in college in '94, and then did it from '94 to '96.
So you did that like what, for a couple months, and then take a break, and then
So tours would be anywhere from a month to. The States tour that we did was like 4 months long.
Okay.
So we do the tours, and then I would actually do some substitute teaching in the Binghamton City School District.
Oh yeah.
And some other surrounding districts during the time between tours. Did that, and then I realized I had to get back in the real world, so I actually started applying to graduate schools. And I had some friends that were living in Buffalo, and I got a chance to get an assistantship there. To get my MBA. They were paying for school and make a little money. So I just thought it was a really good deal. So I got that set up, which started in September, and I was done playing the previous December. So I basically had like 9 months to kill during that time. So I had another buddy who was actually living in Japan teaching English. So I moved over to Japan for 6 months, taught English. The money was actually relatively good. Tax-free, saved up a little bit of money before I went back to grad school.
Oh, wow. So, and you had been to Japan during the tours and liked it, or is that why? Yeah. So,
it was good. I mean, the thing about the Japan tours was they were, unlike some of the other foreign tours, they were really scheduled, really tight. So, we didn't get a chance to do a whole lot of sightseeing, but, just experience the culture. And, we went to all the big cities and rode the Shinkansen and, ate at all the cool restaurants. So it was good. And I thought with my buddy over there, it'd be a good experience to make a little bit of money and get it on the resume.
Okay. So Here's the question that I always ask friends of mine from the basketball days. Do you still play now? Because I've seen you have a video of you dunking this year, so you must try to dunk every birthday, and you can still do it.
So, yeah. I've never really given it up. Yeah, I really still enjoy playing, and we have a group of guys that, it's been about 12 years now since we started playing. We get together every Tuesday, Friday morning, schedule permitting, and we play. And it's a pretty good run. There's some guys that played in college. There's actually been some pro players that have come through. And the good thing for me is that I want to play well there and be able to do it for as long as I can.
Yeah.
So it keeps me working out the other days so that I stay in shape. And then kind of my barometer of basketball in general and staying in shape is I want to be able to dunk. And so I actually turned 42 last year in 2014 and started, gauging myself if I could still dunk. I did it at 42, and then 2 weeks ago I turned 43. And to be frank, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. I had my buddy put the camera on, and I got one down. So 43 is done, and I'll be at the gym tomorrow thinking about next April 25th.
So now, is there ever a chance to go back with the Generals at this point to do it?
So, it's funny. It actually would be good right now to do a tour and go back and do it, but I don't think they'd sign up a 43-year-old dude. That's what
I think about bugging Spanbauer once in a while. Like, I'll get in shape. I'll do just the U.S. cities.
Yeah.
And punch up the show.
Well, why didn't you do it when you had a chance, Paul? That's the question.
Well, I got that internship with the Phoenix Suns, so it's like it's all like you said about that timing. Like if you don't think about what's next, like obviously I would have loved to do it but the whole thing was like I really didn't know what I was going to do because you're like I think I want to coach because my dad always coached, and then you kind of see that life, and not that it's anything to look down to, but it's like it's a lot of work. There's not a lot of money, and you're almost at the point where I'd still like to play. I don't know if I'm ready to like just tell people how to play yet. And you love talking about sports,
right?
And but I wasn't a TV guy. That's eventually why I ended up taking the stand-up class, because I was like, I can talk about sports, but I don't know what it takes to be on TV. Which I mean, the same thing with you kind of performing too. It must have been like I can play, but I don't know what the reaction things are, and there's all these nuances to what a show is,
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I always, my friends always bug me about it. They're like, why, you're so stupid. That's like the perfect blend of what you do, comedy and basketball. Those are the two things you love.
Right.
Like that's the show.
Right.
But I just want to get a final, just for the people listening. What was my game as far as you were concerned? How would you summarize my game back then?
So Paul Morrissey, when I think about Paul Morrissey, he's your consummate, steady point guard who would surprise you. You'd look at Paul and think, okay, steady point guard, but very good handles. I specifically remember in and out crossover moves into jump shots. Great shooter. Really, really good student of the game, who got everybody involved, and it was great to compete against Paul back in the day.
Well, thanks for saying that. But the funny thing is, like even now, like back then when I consider myself in shape, I was still a surprise, like a hustle. I almost like I didn't know that guy could play, and then now of course nobody thinks I can play. And then, so they're just like, we just need to film you, go to like Venice Beach and just play 2-on-2. But you always, you're tall, athletic, great shooter. So I mean, it was no doubt that you were going to be a great Division I player, and you were. And but now you're been really successful, and we're both sitting in California. So we made it out of Binghamton, despite all the shoveling and the snow. And what was the one other thing I was going to ask you? Oh, so do you talk to any of the Binghamton guys anymore, or many of the guys you played with, or?
So occasionally, yeah. Like Jason Watley's actually living in Australia now.
Yeah, that's the guy I didn't know.
Yeah.
Where he ended up.
Yeah.
6'10",
yeah.
9.
6'10". Yeah.
I remember he had a. This was way before Anthony Mason. He had his last name was Watley. He had a hand carved into his head that said SWAT on it.
So now that's the tattoos, right? The tattoo is part of the hoops culture. Back in those days, it was the, print something in the back of your hair culture. And Watley was a great shot blocker, so he had the hand in the back of the head, so that was cool. And occasionally Jeff Merrill, keep in contact with.
Yeah, where is he? Is he?
So Jeff's actually living out here in the West Coast. Well, he lives in Oregon.
I was wondering that. Okay.
Yep, has a child and is doing well up in Oregon. So yeah, and then Rob Baxter, still in the Binghamton area, running a personal training business and is doing pretty well with that.
Ran into it at dinner one night when I was visiting my parents.
All right.
Gave me his card.
Yeah. He wants to get you in shape.
The one other thing I was going to tell you. I go to LAX, waiting for my bag, see a familiar face. And now, as much as I travel, you'd be amazed who I run into that I know even from Little Owego or Binghamton. I see at LAX Hank Nanny waiting for his bag.
All right.
And this is a few years ago, and I'm positive he has no idea who I am, even though my dad was coached against him.
Yeah.
So, and he was, I don't know, what was he doing? He was working for Rick Fox or King Rice or something?
So I think
he was your coach, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mr. Nanny was coached me in football, and then he was my JV coach when I played JV ball, and then our senior year he was our varsity coach as well. And I think he was working with Rick Fox, had a couple of businesses that King Rice was involved in, and Mr. Nanny was helping that as well. I think Mr. Nanny now lives in Las Vegas.
Oh, I was going to say, he at that point looked more LA than I did. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
He settled into that. He looked the part. So Vegas would not surprise me at that point. What does he do now in Vegas?
So I want to say, and I may not be 100% accurate here, that he's still in education at some level.
Okay.
Doing, because he was a teacher and a counselor growing up, so I think he's doing that. Okay.
Because he looked like he was getting into show business at that point when I was, I thought we were both going out for an audition. But yeah, so it is funny who you run into, and you're gonna be coming to my show on Saturday, and how this has been a weird journey, huh?
I think so. I think it's. I was thinking about this as I was driving home from work, and the fact that we actually haven't seen each other in probably 20-25 years. Yeah. And at the same time, I felt like my buddy Paul's coming over to my house, and I think what it is, it's a testament to sports, right? When you compete against people and you compete with people, especially in basketball, you get to know them very quickly. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember Bill Bradley, the successful New York Knick, Rhodes Scholar, presidential candidate. I remember him saying one time, you can learn more about someone playing 3-on-3 basketball for half an hour than you can, in 10 rounds of interviews. And I think it's so true, just in terms of, perspective on teamwork and perspective on competitiveness. And
absolutely, you see who's selfish, who's a cheater, guy will be dishonest or has a bad temper. You can see all that stuff within minutes of just, especially with you being around the game as much as you have. You're
absolutely.
Like, oh yeah, this guy would be trouble in a dogfight.
Absolutely. So I thought about that when I said, I haven't seen Paul in literally between 20 and 25 years, and yet, here we are sitting around the kitchen table in California, talking sports, and it's great.
Well, thanks for being on the show. You have an amazing journey so far, and you got a great family and great home up here, and settled into California. So I think either one of us would have never thought we'd both be sitting here 20 years later.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna get this on tape, but you are now required to show up on Friday morning to play hoops with us. So.
Okay, I don't know if we have radio, but I don't know. I might have to just do commentary like the N1 guys. Oh, Nate, what was did you have a nickname with the Generals at all?
I did actually. Well, it's interesting. In college, we had this point guard, Hassan Brown, New York City point guard, great guy. He was a great leader of our team, and towards the end of our 4 years together, he started calling me Real Deal. Mm-hmm. So it was Nate Real Deal O'Neal. My later years at Colgate, and then when I got to the Globetrotters, they announced me. They would announce everybody in the beginning of the game, and they would give you a nickname. Especially obviously all the Globetrotters, but even the Generals got nicknames, and they started calling me Nate Real Deal O'Neal, and then it evolved to Nate the Great. So.
Yeah. Is that what the starting lineups when you come out at the Garden is that what they said?
Well, they actually did not introduce starting lineups. They introduced everybody.
Yeah.
During the Globetrotters show. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Nate.
Absolutely. It was fun, Paul.
We'll see it. That's awesome.
You took all the money you made franchising your name and bet it against the Harlem Globetrotters?
I thought the Generals were due. He's spinning the ball on his finger! Just take it! Take the ball! That game was fixed. They were using a freaking ladder, for God's sakes.
Well, that was the episode with my good buddy Nate O'Neal. So if you want to see some cool pictures Nate showed me of him with Charles Barkley and Daryl Dawkins and a few other things, you can go to the website, alleyoopodcast.com, or paulhasawebsite.com. You can check for all the tour dates and everything like that for this summer. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.